I'm a huge believer in budgeting and tracking your money. I did that right when I graduated college, and I still do that till this day. I don't think I'll ever not budget. And it's been interesting to hear. I know a lot of the people you have on here don't really track their money that closely, but I do.
You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their current portfolio allocation. Now to your hosts, Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 228. Clark, how's it going? What's going on in your world?
Doing well. Nothing crazy. I mean, following this Ukraine-Russia stuff, which has obviously been crazy. So a lot going on in the news, but I guess staying low-key for me. Nothing big new in my life. Anything for you?
Yeah, no, man, just doing the same. It hits home a little bit, I think, more so for you and I in some ways, just given that we lived in East Europe for a couple years, and we've got a lot of indirect ties to the country of Ukraine through Bulgarians and the USSR and the history and all that there, and definitely prayers with them and their country. But I will say it has been inspiring to watch, just the faith that they have in their country, the leadership of Zelensky and some other things, that have just praying for everyone involved. I mean, it's a terrible scene. Terrible situation. I've been watching it just like everybody else has, and there's definitely things that spill into us and our economy and decisions that get made, and no matter how this thing ends, there's going to be probably repercussions for a very long time on a geopolitical sphere. So something to pay attention to for sure.
Yeah, and it's not going away anytime soon, probably. I don't think, at least.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. So we got an email from Mike from last week's episode, episode 227. Just kind of wanted to give you an update after we sent him, or after he heard his episode. He said, current my net worth is 2.74. So it was 2.25. So he's grown that 500 grand. I've added 2 rental properties to portfolio. My realtor had a deal fall through, and he convinced me to close on my 7th rental. It shows you the power of relationships and staying close to your team. I purchased my 8th in December and just got it rented after a major facelift. Appreciate your podcast and learning from others with a similar mindset. So I thought that was interesting. I think it's interesting always to get updates on people's stories who we just hear, but just his point, Jay, shows you the power of relationships, right? And staying close to your team after he bought his 8th rental property now.
Yeah, no, those relationships are extremely important. It's not just stuff that you build later in your life. It's things that you build when you're young in your life. I just met with a guy not too long ago and talking to him about how he got started in this journey, and he landed himself in a pretty good situation pretty early in his career. And the way that it came about for him was, so there's this business owner. This business owner had a CPA, and the son of that CPA and him were friends, and opened up a crazy opportunity and door for him, big risk that he took, and it's paid significant dividends for him. So coming back to some young kid, teenage relationship type thing. And so just really important to make sure you build those all throughout your life and continue. And this is a great example with Mike where, he had this come into his lap, and you spend those months and years and decades sometimes, and then something happens in your favor. So in last week, just to do a little quick recap on him, he was medical device sales at the time we interviewed him, and 2.25 million, as Clark mentioned. He's up to 2.7 million, so $500,000 increase pretty quickly. So he's definitely getting the flywheel moving. This week we've got Adam. He's a banker, primarily lending on the commercial real estate side. His net worth is $1.4 million. Super excited about his episode. So without any further delay, let's get into the episode with Adam.
Adam, do you want to just give us a little about your background or what you're up to now?
Yeah, for sure, guys. I just want to say thanks for having me on the podcast. It's by far my favorite one, and I've found so much motivation from hearing all the great stories on this. So I'm honored to be, sharing my story, and hopefully can inspire some people out there. So I'm 37. I live in Michigan. Graduated college in 2007, so kind of right when the world was crashing, and my entire career has been commercial real estate. Not on the development side, but working for financial institutions. So I lend money to real estate developers to finance their construction projects or acquisition of their commercial real estate project. That's been my whole, I guess now almost 15-year career has been doing that.
Wow, awesome. And what is your net worth today?
So I just calculated it on last Friday, and we went over 1.4 million, just a tad over, even though market's been down the last couple of days. So we're probably back just under it, but I'm going to say 1.4.
Awesome. Congrats. How is that broken up?
So we have 1.1 million. So the majority of it is what I'll call retirement accounts, although 400,000 of that is in a taxable brokerage account. That's been a big focus of mine with wanting to retire early. So we've really been beefing that up. The rest would be in IRAs and 401ks. And then we have 115,000 in cash, 70,000 in college accounts, 8,000 in UTMA accounts for my two kids. We have roughly 85,000 in equity in our primary house, and then 25,000 of just kind of miscellaneous cars and personal property.
Wow. So you got quite a bit going on. How is the retirement account broken up between traditional and Roth? And then also, is that mainly in index funds, bonds, stocks? What's the makeup there of the retirement?
Yeah. So the IRAs are both traditional, not Roth. I've gone back and forth on doing that, but I'm kind of the believer of I don't know what my tax liability is going to be in the future. So I haven't fully committed to switching to doing the Roth, but I figure, you can kind of transfer that at later dates. So I may do that Roth conversion down the road, but right now it's all traditional. In terms of how I invest, I'm a big believer in index funds. So The Simple Path to Wealth, J.L. Collins, that was really eye-opening reading that about 4 or 5 years ago. So about 60% of our investments would be index funds. I have about 10% each, small, mid-cap, international. And then the last 10% would kind of be a mix of some sector funds, very minimal bonds. And I never thought I would say this, but I put in our first 15,000 into crypto. So I really never thought I'd be saying that, but I think it's here to stay. And so I've thrown just a little bit of money into that sector too.
Did you put it in today or was it before today?
It was, yeah, exactly. So it was, it was like probably about a week ago. It was early last week. So it was on a tear last week. And now, but my viewpoint is obviously very long term. I don't think I've ever, aside from doing some rebalancing, my strategy is just to really hold forever. So, yeah.
So the non-retirement, how is that invested in? Is that just traditional brokerage account where you could pull it out at any time?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, just a traditional brokerage account, and really the allocation of the kind of 60% index funds, and then the rest is really pretty similar across every single account, whether it's the brokerage or the retirement.
So you mentioned you've got a little bit of home equity, but also a note left on that. Why not pay that home off with the money that's in that brokerage account?
Yeah, that's funny. So that's a good question. And I actually, started out as a Dave Ramsey follower. So we bought our house in 2011. So through 2015, I was really only saving 15% of retirement and just plowing down on that mortgage. And then, 5 years ago, really realized I felt behind on my retirement savings, especially to retire early. And so I totally switched strategies, and Dave Ramsey would cringe at this, but we actually did a cash out refinance back at the end of 2015. Not a huge number. I think we maybe pulled out 50,000 of equity, but it went into my taxable brokerage account, and we refinanced I had been on a 30-year, and we just did a 20-year refinance. And really my goal is just to have it paid off by the time that we're financially independent and not working a corporate job anymore.
So Adam, you mentioned that you were a big Dave Ramsey fan. Is that still the case? Or have you shifted and are your viewpoints different from him now?
Yeah, very much I've shifted. There's things about Dave that I agree with and I'm grateful for. And the main things would be I'm a huge believer in budgeting and tracking your money. I did that right when I graduated college, and I still do that till this day. I don't think I'll ever not budget. And it's been interesting to hear. I know a lot of the people you have on here don't really track their money that closely, but I do. And then I think the second thing I agree with Dave on is just avoiding, the consumer debt, getting out of the high interest rate, credit card, student loan debt. I'm not a believer in not using credit cards. It's not making me wealthy, but I'm getting easily $1,000, $2,000 a year probably in the cash back. And why wouldn't you want that free money? And I'm also not a firm believer that you should just be saving 15% for retirement and throwing everything else on your mortgage. It's, rates are so cheap. I think it should be a personal choice. I would never knock someone that chooses to, get out of that mortgage debt as soon as possible, because, there's something to be said to truly be debt free, including your house. But I don't agree with how Dave doesn't think that there's no wiggle room to go the other route, which I have chosen to follow, in that, don't pay extra on the house and save as much as you can for retirement.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into your story a little bit, Adam, and then we'll come back to maybe some more details on your net worth. So, one of the things that intrigues me about your story is this has all happened in the last 10 or 11 years. In 2009, you shared that your net worth was 6,500 ish, right? 6.7 or so. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. And I think, but what was the key on that was, I didn't have any debt. I think I had on there, my only debt was a $2,000 loan to my father because I had massive car repairs and I didn't have any cash to fund it. But that was my only debt. I had gone through college. My father worked for a public university in state, and I had chosen to go there tuition free. So I got through college because of that, no student loan debt, and just, paid cash for cars and lived below my means. But it was, really 2009. Yeah. Starting from nothing. And it was, it was the middle of a recession. So I lucked out in the sense of being able to, stay employed and build my career. But there were multiple career promotions that happened early on in my career where they said, hey, we're going to promote you, but we can't give you any more money, that type of thing. But later on in my career, especially these last 4 or 5 years, the income has really taken off, but I've maintained that same, the same lifestyle hasn't changed at all. We still live in the same house that we bought, 10 years ago.
So were you always in this field in banking for your whole career, or have you moved around?
Nope, whole career, always commercial real estate lending. And I had to relocate, in 2009, I moved from the west side of Michigan to the Detroit area, which was not only the hardest hit area in Michigan, but in the nation. And people just thought I was crazy. Like, why are you moving to Detroit? But it was a good job opportunity. And that has been, career speaking, that's been the best decision I've made.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And what about income? How has your income fluctuated or grown these last 10 or 11 years?
Yeah, a lot. So I'll say my wife and I, even though we were dating at the time. So, she's a social worker, which is a, drastically underpaid profession. No one goes into that field for the money. So I would say when I started out in banking 2007, I think my first paycheck or first salary was $35,000, and my wife was probably making $30,000. So call it $65,000. And we're up to about $220,000 now base. But I get I don't like to rely on it, but it's, every year I get a hefty bonus. And so, we're probably pushing about 300 these last couple of years. And so that's been just instrumental in the wealth building, the income obviously jumping up. But again, we've maintained that same lifestyle. So it's basically all gone towards savings.
Good for you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What, more than 4 times your income in the last 10 years?
Yeah. And, I would say I've made 2, so I'm on my almost 15-year career, on my third bank. So the last two bank switches were big income increases. And so I feel like, unfortunately, in that corporate world, it's a lot easier to really increase your pay by switching companies versus, internally. It's just, for too many stories, I just think that's a reality. But for anyone out there who, is looking, at ways to maybe increase your pay, if you've been at that same company for a long time, go out, test that market. I think you'd be surprised what your value truly is. Don't just rely on what your corporation has been increasing your pay annually. Go test that market.
So is that what drove the job changes, was to take higher income, or or were you comfortable, or was it something else that happened at work?
No, in all honesty, I've had just a fantastic mentor who, when I moved to Detroit in 2009, it was a internal transfer. It was the same bank, but that's the person I started to work for in Detroit, and we made the move together in 2011. And then one other person made that jump with us too, and then we made another career or another employer switch at the end of 2007, and it was the three of us staying together. So it wasn't income driven at all, but it just kind of, none of us were forced to make that move. So when they were kind of asking what my salary expectations were, I kind of shot for the moon and was surprised to not get a lot of pushback on it. So it was not the driver of why I did it, but it ended up being, a good benefit that wasn't necessarily intended to be, if that makes sense.
What was that conversation like? I mean, that you were essentially shocked that there wasn't much pushback.
Yeah, well, it was actually so I would have never done that, thrown that out there, but it was, my boss and mentor. I think he knew I wouldn't give a high enough number. So he told me, like, I think he even said, aim high, what's your number? And I think I said, and he goes, no, do something higher. And so I did, but if it wasn't for that advice, I probably would have, short sailed myself but I gave a number that was, it turned out to be fair, right? So I think I've always had that mentality of kind of probably self-doubting myself, but that's always been a huge, like, motivating factor that, that I actually appreciate that I have that mindset. But it's, don't sell yourself short and, what your value truly is out there in terms of market value to an employer.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. It's something that we probably don't talk about enough on this podcast, is growing a career and understanding your value in the marketplace. And two, maybe not being afraid to ask for it too, right? And, I'm glad that you were able to have that experience and speak to that a little bit. How did you go about understanding what your value was so that you felt confident in getting and asking for what you got?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I would go back to, my boss and my mentor, who's, been in this field for 30 years and I've never been a manager of anyone, but, the majority of a large portion of his career has been at that management level. So I think he has a lot better feel of kind of, what that market rate is for someone. So, it was really, it was that relationship and, being close enough to someone like that, to, truly have a mentor that you can have, though, that it's a lot of people wouldn't have, they're not close enough to anyone, in their professional circle to have that open dialogue. So it's just, but I've been blessed to have that type of relationship where, we can have that type of conversation.
Yeah, totally. So as you've gone on this journey, you mentioned a little bit that you might be interested in early retirement. When did that come to the surface, that was something maybe you wanted to pursue? And how do you plan on going and pursuing that?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So it's funny because I really stumbled upon it. It was finding the FIRE movement. So I think I found it through the Choose FI Facebook page, and I had never, it's crazy to think about it now, but I had never even thought about it, right? My father is in his 70s now, and he's someone who just, he'll never fully retire. Not because he financially can't, but that's just his mentality, like, of work is who he is. And I think I just kind of was blindly following that, thinking, well, maybe I'll retire when I'm 65 or 70. And when I found that FIRE movement, it's just like literally a light bulb went off, and I immediately, started looking at how much I was saving a year for retirement, which I think at that time, I think I was only saving and I had created like a plan, I had, maybe a year or so before I had created a plan that was showing like saving $20,000 a year or something, which I think at that time was about 15% of our incomes. And that was going to get me to about, $1.8 million, I think, when I was like 67. And I just thought that was the plan. And now it's like, I love what I do. I don't think I could be in a corporate career that I enjoyed more, but there's nothing that I would love more than to have that financial independence of knowing I never have to earn another dollar. And the dilemma I'm in, in a lot of ways, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. There were things I wanted to try coming out of college that I never did. And now I'm kind of stuck in this corporate career that I truly love and enjoy. But how could I walk away from that right now and go try some of those entrepreneur ideas that I had, 15 years ago. So my plan is to continue working the career I have, and hopefully, in the next, 10 to 13 years, by, kind of the target's age 50, I'll be truly financially independent. And I think there's a lot of cushion I have in what that number is. And then in my mind, retirement isn't just, sitting on the beach. It's going to be, I want to do some real estate, huge passion for personal finance. I'd love to financial coach. So there's plenty of things that I plan to do, but I just want to have that. I don't want to pursue those passions with the caveat of knowing I have to earn X amount of income. I want to have the freedom of knowing, even if I made $0 doing it, where that's okay.
Yeah, totally. So will that be a number that you'll walk away and pursue those, or what's your mindset around when you'll feel comfortable to maybe do that?
Yeah, it's a number, and it's solely based on just real estate, or I'm sorry, not real estate, but just, stock market investments, my index funds. And I think I'm uber conservative in what I'm projecting out the income I annually need to live on. So it's obviously just, calculating the 4% rule. And, there's a lot of unknowns with health insurance. What is that going to cost? All of that. So I feel pretty confident that, I'll be able to walk away, in the next 10 years. And again, it's a number that's going to, I think, be more than what I actually end up needing. Because again, we live pretty basic lives. There's nothing extravagant that we plan to do beyond, being able to kind of travel a lot.
How much do you spend a year?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I track everything. And so the way I budget is everything that's reoccurring every month. So our monthly budget is about $6,000 a month, but then that wouldn't include some of the non-monthly expenses like, car insurance, which is twice a year, property taxes. So we're probably, when you add in that, I would guess we're probably spending, maybe $8,000 a month over a full year. I should have looked that number up.
Oh, that's all right. So 90 to 100 grand, probably 95 maybe.
Yeah, because we're saving about 45% gross just towards retirement. So when you add in, just normal savings and college funds, it's north of 50%. So
good for you. Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because you mentioned 15%. Now you're up to 40 or 45% of gross. What is your order of operations? How do you allocate that money? It seems that you're putting it into 401k and IRA. You also have pretty large balances in your education saving accounts. But how do you, what's kind of your process, your order of operations for every dollar or every $1,000 that you earn and save?
Yeah, so the 401k is probably the priority in terms of I maximize it out over the whole year to get the maximum match from my employer. So it's a decent match. I think it just changed, but I think it's roughly, I believe it's 5% match. So we fully max out. I can't remember now what the max 401k is, 19,000 or 19,500, but we fully max out the 401k. It's the tax savings up front too. So it's the match plus the tax deduction on the pay. And then we do our IRAs. And then my wife's retirement is, forget the exact name, but it's, social worker for the county. So I think it's not a 401k, but the 403B or whatever that is. But that's a required, like we don't have a choice on that percentage, but that's not coming close. That's, I think we're putting like combined into those two accounts like $10,000 a year. So then after that, it's everything into that taxable brokerage account. I think that's to retire early and have that flexibility of knowing I can access that money for whatever it may be without penalty beyond just capital gains taxes.
Yeah. And is real estate in the plans at all?
Yeah, it's funny because I have so much real estate background. It's what I do for my career, and yet I own none of it besides our primary house. Right now I have little kids, and I haven't had the desire to do the residential real estate, whether it be rentals or flipping. But yeah, definitely that's part of the plan of what I want to do beyond 50. So, it won't be anything large scale, but I'll probably dabble in just, flipping or rentals, potentially maybe doing some commercial real estate, because that's obviously my expertise. Even if I've never actually done a project, I'm well versed in it. So yeah, that's on the radar, but down the line a little bit.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by LoanSteady. As regular listeners know, we love companies that can improve your financial well-being. We vet sponsors carefully to make sure that they can deliver a great experience to our listeners. So if you're in the market for a home loan or interested perhaps in refinancing or would like to take cash out for a special project or home improvements, especially before rates potentially rise this year, check out LoanSteady. They have 350 five-star Google reviews, so customers leave happy. They have a special offer for listeners of Millionaires Unveiled. Before April 1, go to www.loansteady.com/millionaire and apply. And LoanSteady will waive all lender fees, including application and processing fees. Important terms and conditions apply. For more licensing, please visit www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. This is LoanSteady LLC, NMLS number 1701910, equal housing lender. So get a rate today and see how LoanSteady can help you reach your financial goals. Go to www.loansteady.com/millionaire to get your special offer today. If you're just tuning in here, we're talking with Adam, net worth of about 1.4, 37 years old. His net worth in 2009 was $6,500. So he's done this all in the last 11 years or so. Adam, let me ask you about, you have a car loan, right?
Yeah.
Car payment?
Yeah.
About $57,000, is that right?
It is. And it's, full disclosure, and it's most expensive car I've ever purchased. It's a BMW. It was a dream car, purchased used. I don't think I know I won't. I don't think I'll ever buy a brand new car. But I heavily negotiated I'm a deal guy, so I was probably looking for about 3 months. Once, I go test drive something, so I knew exactly the year and model I want, and then I just do a kind of 500-mile radius search on Auto Trader, and I found once you start looking at a specific year and model, when you have a good price. So my strategy was I found a good price, and then I focused on negotiating the interest rate, right? Because they not the price. So I think I got them down to like 1.7% on the car note. And so my mind was, it's like free money. And I'll get sick of it and I'll pay it off early. But that's I've never done anything like that before. But I view it as I'm going to earn a lot more in the market than the 1.7 I'm paying on it.
Sure. No, I was just curious. So what was your upbringing like? Did your parents teach you about money, or where did you learn about this? How did your background lead you to where you are now, if at all?
Yeah, so middle class upbringing, we never really talked about money in the sense of investing or anything like that, but it was always, I was taught, you work your butt off, and so from 16 on, I've always pretty much worked almost full time and avoid debt. So I was lucky to do that, but I wasn't very good at saving any of that money. And I could have, even at that age of 16, I kind of a funny story, but you have to be 18 to deliver pizzas, but I had an older friend who was an assistant store manager at a pizza joint, and they let me, they overlooked my actual age. So 16, I get my first job. I have my first beater car, and I'm delivering pizzas and, making good money for a 16-year-old kid, right? All my friends are making $5 an hour minimum wage, and I'm, coming home on a Friday night with $150 of cash from tips. So even from that age, I could have been investing, and I wish I would have had, if someone would have shown me the compound interest chart of starting, at 16 and throwing a couple $100 in the market a month. I mean, I would like to think it would have been eye-opening, and I would have followed through with that. But that's something I hope to pass on to my kids.
Yeah. What drives you, and what used to drive you? Has that changed at all? I ask this frequently because I'm just curious about how I think that shifts through the years. I think initially when we start working, investing, we're determined to save and to invest. And we look at compound interest, as you just mentioned, and you want to get started quick.
Yeah.
And later in life, it seems to be from a lot of our millionaires, they want the freedom. But I'm just curious what drives you now and what used to drive you, if that's the case.
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So I'd say starting out of college, starting my career was totally driven by my job, my work, succeeding at it, getting promotions, kind of climbing that corporate ladder. So it was all work driven, and I never really, and it wasn't even the financial aspect of it. And because like I said earlier, a lot of my promotions in 08 and 09, it didn't really come with much pay bumps. So, but I had the mindset of income will take care of itself down the road, and it has. So yeah, so it was really just that career progression. And, there's a lot of 60, 70, 80 hour weeks in that recession. And some of that was driven by fear of job loss too. But the shift, especially over these last 5 years and since becoming a father, it's definitely the time, the freedom, the independence to just do whatever I want to do. And again, it's not because I'm not happy with my career, because I am, but man, you can't put a price tag on being able to have that financial independence. So right now, that is 100% my driver. I think about it every day, without a doubt, multiple times a day. I'm thinking about it.
Do your family or friends know of your wealth?
Yeah, no. I think no. I would say the easiest answer is no. I don't have anyone that I openly talk about the finances with, and that's why I love this podcast. It's why I love the Facebook financial pages out there, and that's why I love those communities. That's where I feel comfortable, sharing details and my story. But it just hasn't, for whatever reason, it just hasn't, happened with my immediate circle of family and friends.
Being in banking and around others that deal with money and loans and understanding finance, would you say your coworkers are on a similar path to you, or are they not so much?
No, I would say overall, yes. But I also would say, I've made the decision of living, I live farther out. So for all these years, I've had kind of a crappy 45-minute commute each way. So that's been one blessing of COVID, is the work from home. And I don't think I'll ever go back to the office 5 days a week. I think it'll be more like maybe 1 day a week. But I specifically chose to live in a much lower real estate cost area. So that's been a huge driver. And I've seen everyone else too, as their incomes have grown, that's meant, big upgrades and primarily houses. And we have not made that change. So, the house we bought 10 years ago, part of it was great market timing, but I mean, it was 185,000, and we still live in it. I have no plans to ever change houses, so it will probably forever be our house. And that's been a big driver in building the wealth too, is kind of skipping out on that. Let's go buy, not that there's anything wrong with it, but let's go, upgrade to a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 house, or, even much more than that in a high cost of living area.
Yeah, you bought it for 180 and now it's worth what? Just over 300?
Yeah. So it was
awesome.
Great. Again, it was great. It was great timing. But again, if we had live in, there's some much more expensive suburbs of Detroit. So even if you made it apples to apples of what that would have cost 10 years ago, I mean, that 180 would have easily been 2-3 times that in a lot of markets, even 10 years ago.
Sure. Do you budget, Adam? Or have you ever budgeted?
Yeah, budget. First job out of college, I created it in Excel, and I still do to this day. So every penny.
Every month?
Yeah. And we have a joint credit card. All expenses go on that. So the only thing that comes out of the debit or the checking account is auto debit stuff. So it's, having just kind of the one card makes it easy. So I kind of update it every week. Doesn't take that long.
Yeah. What about a financial advisor? Have you ever used a financial advisor?
Never have, and I don't think I will. Again, big believer in the index funds, and I feel very, very confident in that strategy.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into some rapid fire questions here, and then we'll wrap up with just some overall general mistakes and advice. And I know we covered a couple of these: household spending about 90, not including all expenses; range of household income about 65,000 to 300. Amazing. How old were you when you became a millionaire?
So that happened 2020, and again, I was actually 30. It was last summer, so I was 37 and still 37, but I turned 38 on Sunday. So
young. Well, 37, and now you're already at 1.4.
Yeah, time in the market.
Amazing.
Good market run.
Yeah. Any books or products you recommend?
Yeah, I'm a big reader. I've probably read, all the common books that get thrown out on here, but I'll go back to J.L. Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth. I recommend that all the time, and it's just everyone should read it. So as soon as my kids are of age, that's going to be a required book to read. Everyone should read it.
Okay, what's the most expensive? I think we talked about this, but the most expensive car you've ever purchased?
Yeah, that was the used but very nice BMW that I bought last summer. So I think all in taxes, it was probably almost 60,000. But no regrets.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just say no regrets on it. Probably took me about 12 months to pull the trigger though, but no regrets.
Okay. What about the most expensive meal out that you've personally paid for?
Yeah, probably we did an anniversary dinner at a nice restaurant downtown Detroit, my wife and I, a couple of years ago. So it was probably about $300.
Okay. What's been worth spending more money on to you, and what's not worth the money?
I'd say the travel, the vacations. My kids are young. They're not going to want to do, we've done Disney cruises. They're not going to want to do that when they're 15. So yeah, definitely the travel. And then I would say not worth spending money on. I would say the big house upgrade. We've skipped that, and I have no regrets on that.
Awesome. So let me just ask, I'm looking here at your income, 65 to 300. And I know we touched on this a little bit earlier when Chase was asking, but as your income has jumped like that, more than 4 times in the last 10 years, how have you controlled or been able to control your household spending, or has it increased? I assume it's increased some, but you seem like a pretty simple millionaire next door type of guy.
Totally millionaire next door type guy. And I'm sure the spending's really crept up. A lot of it has just been kids and the travel, traveling more. Now, my wife and I now do a trip, just us, every year. So the majority of that increase in spending has been travel and kid expenses. But I'd say it's just been natural. And I would say it's because of having a spouse who's totally, the same, on the same financial page as you, right? So my wife is not a a big spender, and there's not that pressure of upgrading house or, buying the brand new cars or whatever else it may be. So it's just been kind of natural. It was easy to just maintain that same lifestyle.
Sure. Let's talk happiness. Has the money made you more happy?
I don't think it's made me any more happy, but it's given me, I feel a sense of peace of knowing that I'm on that right track to achieving just such an ultimate goal. And that's going to be to have that financial independence at a relatively, what I consider still a young age. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Good for you. So just wrapping up here, mistakes and advice. Are there some mistakes that you would caution against, or couple that with general advice for somebody who's just starting off? I mean, what worked for you and what should people do? How were you able to be so financially successful now?
Yeah, I remember when I started out right out of college and trying to enroll in 401k, and I chose not to because in my mind I thought I can't afford to save that 15%, and I'll do it when I make more money. And I really didn't start saving anything for retirement then until I was 28. And so I would say just pay yourself first, especially at every age, right? Even when you're your first job, like just put that 15% into an account. Pay yourself first. That's just, I wish I would have. It would have shaved years off of what my target date is now to retire.
Well, you've done phenomenally well. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your story. Really fun to hear about it. Congrats on your success. Again, everybody, that's Adam, net worth of 1.4. Congrats and thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Clark Sheffield and Chase Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website at millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.